Introducing Soul. He ain't a junkie, but he drools a lot. It's fair. Let's go get him.
Hey, what's up everyone, and welcome back to All the Oscars, the series where I watch every single movie that was ever nominated or had won Best Picture by the Academy Awards, which they recently announced the movies that were the 2017 movies. I know there's a little bit confusion. Like the 2018 Oscars celebrate the 2017 movies, so whenever I have to refer to like which Oscars I'm talking about, I usually talk about which movies came out the year they're celebrating. I know there's a little bit of confusion in that, but finally, as of the time of this recording, a year, like maybe not a year after I started doing this, but we're coming up on a pretty long time since I started the series, and now I got a whole new batch of movies that were thrown at me even before I could finish the 2016 movies. The 2017 movies are out. That being said, we're talking about Hidden Figures, which is, I have only one more 2016 movie after this one. Then I'll have done them all, like a legit analysis guy. And Hidden Figures, it's interesting that, you know, the Oscars are getting a lot of flack for being racist, despite the fact that Fences and this movie, and even Moonlight, all have themes and story structures surrounding racism. And, you know, even like Get Out was nominated for this year. And it's so much embedded in these stories how, like, terrible racism is. And despite that fact, you know, whether or not they're intentionally, they're kind of snubbing a lot of black actors and snubbing the black community. But they snub a lot of communities. Like, it's not just the black community, it's movies, you know, anime films are getting snubbed. I could go on. We're talking about Hidden Figures. I should stay on that track. But this movie specifically, the reason why I bring up the whole black culture thing is it surrounds a woman who grew up during the space war, the Cold War with Russia, the space age time. During this time, you know, she is a black woman who is going through, you know, a lot of injustice, a lot of what was going on through that time. She's trying to work at NASA, and, you know, well, she is working at NASA, but she's trying to get, like, some kind of footing here, because racism is still a real thing. You know, there's a lot of disadvantages she has. Like, for instance, there is no colored bathrooms in the building where she works at, so she has to go half a mile just to use the bathroom. And she's constantly, you know, working with all these white men, and they are constantly, like, looking, like, if they're looking for someone to take their bullshit out on, they're gonna take it out on her because they look down on her. And there's so many instances in this movie where people are either not really like causing the problem, but still a part of it, where they just kind of like will be like, what's a woman doing in here, and then at the same time there's the people who are specifically like saying, you can't work here, you are not going to enter this room and be in a meeting with all these white people, you are not going to you're not going to act smarter than these people, even though in reality this woman is way smarter and way more. This movie is about her being a number cruncher. She specifically is trying to, like, she's not an astronaut, you know, obviously the movie isn't about that, despite the fact that it is a picture, it's a point in time picture, and we're specifically, you know, within the space age, and the big, like, climax of the movie is, are we gonna get this thing into orbit? Not go to the moon, none of that. We're just gonna try to get this spaceship into orbit and make this guy survive. And she is doing all the numbers for this project and is gonna make sure this happens. And, you know, that's a big deal. And, you know, the numbers are changing every day. She is trying to be at the head of this project, which, like, she should be at the head of this project because she's the smartest one, but at the same time, you know, we're living in a much worse time. And there's, you know, a couple people on the staff who are with her, who don't give a shit, and people are against her. And it's like that in every job medium, like working, like, in just the small jobs I've had, there's, small little debates like this, and this is obviously on a much bigger scale, and there's actual injustice here. But, that's something I can relate to. And, there are parts of this movie that I don't think I can, feel the same weight as, maybe some other people had, because, this movie does a lot of things. It reminds me a lot of The Imitation Game, where there's a lot of different, I don't know, genres or cliches or tropes that this movie fits into. It's a space age timepiece movie, for the, the demographic of the old Oscar people. It's got to take place in the time frame of when they grew up, On top of that, it's also a girl power movie. It's a the celebration of amazing people within the black community kind of film. It's a lot of different things, and it's also, when I go back to the girl power movie, like the cover of this movie is like the three biggest main leads, who are all female, side by side, and they're like, walking forward progressively. And so it's a very big girl power movie, and even though culturally, like, I like seeing that history, and I like being, like, obviously, like, I see people around me inspired, like, by that, but at the same time, I have never, like, felt injustice because of, like, just my gender, or even because of the color of my skin. I haven't felt real injustice like these people have, so it's kind of difficult, like, to see other people who feel the real passion behind that, who actually like, hey, I feel injustice, seeing this other person who feels the same way, give the comeuppance to their bad people and goes that extra mile. Like, I'm never going to be able to feel what they feel, but at the same time, I'm still, like, it's a part of history and culture, and, obviously, like, their inspiration falls onto me. That being said, that's basically what most of this movie is. This isn't like a biopic. I know a lot of people are talking about her family and personal life of the main actress. They go into it a tiny bit, but most of what this movie is people in rooms talking about this whole space thing. And that's really what the heart of this movie is, with a couple of dramatic key points in between that. And there's nothing wrong with that. Movies like The Social Network and a million other movies along those lines. I like talking movies, but a lot of those movies are filmed in much more interesting ways. Most of the rhythm of this movie and the pacing just seemed to be like, let's put in music from this time period and, like, show our characters, going through the thick of it, and then, like, when there's happier moments, we're going to play this more upbeat music from this time period, and that was kind of the rhythm. And then the dramatic moments, and then the big moments, it was all stuff I felt and gone through a couple times. Like, I've seen a number of movies like this, and really, like, watching these, I usually have to watch these movies by myself, these Oscar movies, because I don't think that many of my friends or close people would be that interested in them. And they're so easy to get distracted from. Like, there's so many scenes in this movie where nothing, like, visually interesting was happening, and they were just covering the same bases with the dialogue. And there aren't any, dramatic, flashy characters. And obviously I'm interested. I really like space exploration bullshit. I like sci-fi. It's obviously not sci-fi, but just space bullshit in general I'm interested in. And in this movie, even though we got that, there's 100,000 other pieces of film or whatever that I can feel that feeling way more than in this movie. That's another one of those things. It's also like a space movie, I wouldn't put it side by side with, like, movies like Gravity, but, they're in that vein, like Apollo 13 type shit. And, none of the performances, they're all, like, good for what they were, but these characters, just based off of real people, I'm not going to be like, oh, they're uninteresting. I'm not insulting the person. But the events here are what's interesting, and the events in film format, with, you know, not that interesting of filmmaking style, it just all adds up to an experience that, you know, I saw people giving, like, not, like Chris Stuckman gave this movie like an A minus, and I'm like, I really don't feel like when I watch like your enthusiasm that you're feeling an A minus kind of status for this movie. You know, this movie accomplishes something that's impressive, but that's kind of it. You know, usually like my 8 out of 10s, I'm like with the characters, I'm with the artistic style or the aesthetic. I've been using that word way too much many in my videos, but the aesthetic is important to me. The music is important to me. And it's not like this movie like sucked in any of those departments, but I need something to click. Like all art needs to click somewhere. And this movie just didn't click with me. And, you know, that's not to its own fault, I think. Sometimes it's kind of just, is this movie the kind for me, or is this movie more for the Academy, you know, the people who are going to vote for it? And, you know, I think that's kind of how I would sum up my feelings for this movie in general. And I would honestly just give this movie a 6 out of 10. It's probably my least favorite out of all of the movies that were nominated for Best Picture 2016, except for Lion, which I can't, you know, say for because I haven't done that one yet. And that's going to be the last movie in our 2016. And then we're going to move on to either, I don't know if I'm going to just go straight to the new ones, or it doesn't really matter what order I go in, so I'll just go with the flow. But that is my thoughts on Hidden Figures. If you enjoyed this one more than the other movies, then I'm sorry. I just didn't care for this as much as Fences or Hell or High Water, any of them really. Arrival, all of the movies I thought were better than this one. But that's my personal opinion. I want to know your guys' personal opinion down below. And yeah, just let me know more thoughts on this whole year of movies. And yeah, anyway, thank you so much for watching, and with that, I leave you.